You ready? You're ready? You're all set? Okay, so this is a call to order of a special meeting of the Bridgeport Board of Education. Today's date is Thursday, June 30th, 2022, and the time is noted as being 6:30 PM. Mr. Secretary, would you call the roll? As needed, list.
No, I got it. Bobby Brown,
Here.
Dean Baptiste Perez,
Present.
Joseph Kolovic,
Present.
Erica Castillo,
Present.
John Weldon,
Present.
Albert Benahan, Sybil Allen, Michael Macaron, Joe Lombard present.
Okay, we have a quorum. So this special meeting was requested by Joseph Kolovic in conjunction with Christine Baptiste Perez and Albert Benahan. And later, Ms. Brown also indicated she was in favor of it. So the first item on the agenda is discussion and possible action on performance. Board member Joseph Sokolovic. This item qualifies for discussion of this qualifies for executive session unless Mr. Sokolovic requires that it be held in the open meeting. So I'm going to ask Mr. Sokolovic if he's going to make this such an election.
No, on that, and Mr. Chair, I would like to request that we have a temporary chair, since we're both subject to this meeting, that we appoint a temporary chair to run this meeting, given umpires.
So
And I would suggest Mr. Joseph Lombard, since he did not sign off on the special meeting, I think he can maintain the most neutrality in the issue.
So we're not able to do that. If you had wanted to do that, that should have been placed on the agenda under the laws. We're going to have to proceed with these two items exactly as they appear. So for item one, I'm just going to ask what you want to talk about.
Okay. I've got a presentation. I'd appreciate if I have the floor without being interrupted until I've completed. Russell?
Let the record reflect that Mr. Benahan has joined the meeting online.
Thank you.
And I'll send this to you, Ms. Brown and Mr. Benahan in a moment. We get through it, so you can have a copy.
That's okay, Mr. Joe. I'm on my way. I'll be there between 5-7 minutes. Don't worry about it. Thank you.
Good evening, my fellow board members and those of you who are watching from home. I apologize that we have to be here today on this beautiful summer day, but there were a few issues that need to be addressed. June 16th, 2022, during the superintendent evaluation workshop, the chair, John Weldon, gave his chairman report. This was added to the special meeting notice on the website, simply as chairman report. An item that confused the majority of us present because the agenda included in our board packet did not have such a report listed. Under the guise of this chairman's report, Chairman Weldon, in an illegal action in violation of the Freedom of Information Act, added an action item to the special meeting to publicly level accusations against Joseph Sokolovic. This was based on an internal email, which we've all read, and I will also read it into the record for the public. And as a result of this email, Mr. Sokolovic was stripped of all committees, assignments, and replaced him with board members, some of whom were not even asked if they could fulfill or even wanted to fulfill their new responsibilities before being placed on them. This unilateral decision taken on an internal email against the board, as far as producing action items, a member who has held nearly every meeting required as committee chair, has 100% attended record for regular meetings and his own committee meetings over 5 years. This action is disproportionate to the inaction Chairman Weldon has taken toward board members in the past and present, including but not limited to board members who failed to hold committee meetings as chair for 8 months and only one meeting for the entire year, continue to have poor attendance at regular and committee meetings, recently began shouting matches which disrupted meetings, publicly called the chair corrupt, constantly disrupt meetings, board members under investigation or arrested for trespassing, kidnapping, stabbing, living out of district, election infractions. I'm almost sure I missed a few headlines, and those who've posted racist and homophobic posts on social media.
Hold on, I'm sorry.
This is all, I would like to finish before I take questions.
Okay.
This all based on the following email on June 10th regarding a meeting that hadn't been posted. The subject area being stated, the bad guy. Mr. Sakalovic began. No, I am not trying to flex. No, I'm not trying to play gotcha. Once again, we did not have a posting for a scheduled meeting, thereby requiring another cancellation. We need to do better as a board. It is embarrassing that this is happening for the third time this year and that we can't get basic FOIA requirements correct. I would like to suggest again that all chairs, whether board or committee chairs, check the website to ensure a timely posting of agendas, as sometimes staff may be overwhelmed by their workload. Facilities has only met twice this year. The only other committee that has met less is the calendar committee, so it is imperative that this meeting is rescheduled. Chairman Weldon replied, "You waiting until after 12 minutes after the FOIA deadline to send this chastising gotcha email," well, that one, "and then denying that's not what it was, is a little disingenuous. If you want to appoint yourself the FOIA police, it would be more helpful for you to alert us to a potential violation in enough time to correct the situation instead of waiting and watching for the issue to be problematic before opening your mouth. The meeting will be scheduled to be compliant with FOIA laws. I will also make sure IT staff appreciates the importance of posting these items within the proper deadlines." Sakalovic reply number 1, caps. "It is not my job. It's your committee. Pay attention to your responsibility. You are failing to hold meetings, failing to put items on the agenda. You have 4 committees, yet have called fewer meetings than any other 2 committees combined." Again, in caps, "Do your job, call your meetings, check that they are posted." Sakalovic replied 2 and 3. "Only wrote the above because I knew that's what you would think. It's predictable in trying to dodge responsibility for your failures." Oh, and 6:42 minus 6 o'clock is 42 minutes after the meeting, not 12. Weldon's reply. "Joe, you are under the misimpression that this is a dialogue. It is not. However, since you have chosen to respond the way you have, I will tell you this. Your varying 3 responses reveal a lot about you with the level of blame, name calling, and self-righteousness that they convey. It is unfortunate that you choose to conduct yourself in this fashion. So much more could be achieved if you weren't so combative. I hope you will give that some thought. In closing, the meeting has been removed from everyone's calendar, and I am scheduling a discussion to IT to determine why meeting notices / agendas are not making their way to the website after the superintendent's office uploads them. No further response on this topic is warranted. I am going to enjoy the rest of my Saturday. I would ask that you try to do the same." Sakalovic's final response: "Have a drink on me. Do us all a favor and don't drive or give any speeches." Great advice for anybody. This email, while assertively and undoubtedly calls out the chair for his failures and shortcomings, the blame he talks about, as board chair and as a member of a board, we'll discuss that the next item on the agenda. This was factual, contained no name calling. As a chairman, Wellman asserts in his email, and it's a poor basis to remove me from all committees. One has to believe there are other motives besides this or any internal email. There has been no misconduct at all in this email, much less anything that should rise to the level to remove Mr. Sakalovic from all committees. Especially telling to me is Sakalovic's total removal from the committee he created, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Chairman Weldon added himself, a man who uses the term woke as an insult, a man who posts on social media, Black people who call themselves Black are ignorant, a man who shares a homophobic post about a toy that insinuates homosexuals are sinful. I will present evidence of all this in the next agenda item. A man that is only a member of this board not to vote yes to adding Eid al-Fitr to the calendar. The man who created a calendar committee to come up with a policy to regulate future requests. A man who is expending taxpayer dollars for legal advice and creating such a policy because no other district that has passed additional holidays felt this policy was necessary. Speaking of policy, I would like to point out that the bylaw, specifically bylaw 9280, which governs committee assignments, the policy speaks to the chair's power to appoint committee members by filing as soon as possible after the organizational meeting and is silent on removing a committee member for cause. The chair expressly stated he was removing me for my actions. The chair does not have that power expressively written into the bylaws. All this being said, I would like to make a motion to keep Mr. Sakalovic in place on all committees he was legally appointed to in accordance to bylaw 9280.
Second.
Thank you, and I apologize that your time has been wasted today. And now, Mr. Chair, if somebody has a question, I'd be happy to answer it.
Okay. Castillo initially tried to ask a question.
Thank you. In your third paragraph here, where there's, sort of disconnected sentences, is this whole paragraph from failed to hold committee meetings as chair for 8 months and only one for the entire year, continued to have poor attendance at regular and committee meetings, recently began shouting matches which disrupted meetings, publicly calls the chair corrupt, constantly disrupted meetings, board members under investigation or arrested for trespassing, kidnapping, stabbing, living out of the district, election infractions. I'm almost sure I missed a few headlines. Are these headlines from newspapers or are these?
These are headlines and these are all separate actions, mostly separate instances that have happened on the board that even if this board finds that this email was in some sort of violation, that are far worse than anything and any email that contains no swear words and no violations of any rule or regulation.
So, but
None of these things were called out publicly by the chair. I was publicly called out in violation of the law.
so are you now calling out him on having done these things? Do you have substantiated evidence to present today showing that these things happened?
Some of it, yes. So yeah, some of it would be more appropriate for the next agenda item, but I feel
Let the record reflect that Mr. Macarone is in the meeting.
okay, as far as board members calling black people ignorant, what did I put that one in there on this?
So I'm going to respond to that. You said it, I'm going to respond to it.
She had the floor.
I am responding to this. So 3 years ago, Mr. Sokolovic and I had a nasty back and forth on Facebook. For anyone who isn't aware, this is it. Okay, thank you. My wife is African descent. Her father is from Africa. Joe and I were having a nasty back and forth. He made some disparaging remarks about my marriage, which I shared with my wife, and she replied to me that she doesn't consider herself, quote unquote, black. Black is a color. And she feels that people who consider themselves black are ignorant. Now, subsequent to this exchange, I publicly apologized to Mr. Sokolovic. And for my part, I considered that to be the end of it. And I think he should too,
I did.
because when it's over, it's over. As for what he is passing out now, I have a handout too. There's a company in Chicago called Death by Toys. And it makes spoof gag toys. And these are some of their products. And I saw a post about them, and some of their toys I thought were funny. They're gag gifts. Some of them are a little distasteful, but others have a degree of humor to them. And so I made a post that's quite possibly the oddest toys ever. I said, funny stuff. Mr. Sokolovic selectively picked this Adam and Steve image and manipulated it to indicate that I'm some kind of a gay basher or homophobe, which is simply not true. And if you look at these other images, you'll get a bigger sense of the context of what I saw caused me to say stuff. Mr. Sokolovic is a manipulator and a conniver. And he manipulates things.
Can we not name call? Point
He
of
manipulates things. That's what you're doing here, Joe. This is a manipulation.
Those are facts.
This is the full,
Those are facts you posted.
this is the full picture in context. This is a manipulation.
This is why I want.
Manipulation, I have no tolerance for that, Joe.
You have no tolerance.
You have no tolerance?
Tolerance for gays or?
May I ask a
African
question?
Ask a question.
I had my hand up, John.
Go ahead.
I've been,
There was a motion,
That
a second.
is not valid because
Why is it
if
not
you wanted to
valid?
do that, you had to state it on the agenda.
The agenda is discussion and possible action on the.
And that's your fault. You didn't word it correctly. If that's what you wanted to do, you should have stated it.
Wording.
are we still having discussion before
Go
we
ahead.
get to the vote on the motion?
And I will add, I have the authority to make the appointments. You can't reverse my decision. You want to change a bylaw that gives me a certain authority, you can do that. But you can't just flip it. Go ahead, Eric.
How long ago was this?
3 years ago.
Why are we discussing this today?
Well,
It's going to be relevant in the next portion. I asked you to
Okay.
hold off, but you asked for the evidence.
Well, I mean, we already talked about it. So
Well, no, it's still going to have.
3 years ago, it's ancient history.
It's relevant to.
And it's manipulated.
And
It's
as
manipulated.
far as the.
It's manipulated.
Can I answer?
It's manipulated.
Can I?
It's manipulated. It's manipulated to assassinate my character.
Can I answer Ms. Castillo's question fully? The person who failed to hold committee meetings, this is public record for 8 months. I came to the board and I did public speaking. We can look in the minutes if you truly want to pin it down. If you question the veracity of any of these things, I can actually send you point by point. The committee that failed to hold meetings for 8 months, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The work was stalled for 1 year. This is why this stuff that happened 3 years ago is relevant today. Why, when it comes to that committee, is things stalled. Why that is also relevant today is because the man appointed himself to the committee. Is this the kind of person we want on that committee? A person who thinks woke is a dirty word.
He didn't appoint himself chair of the
No, but he
committee.
appointed himself.
And this certainly has not been the case since I got sworn in December.
And
We've met pretty regularly and we've done great work on the diversity committee.
yes. And who's the only person who voted no on any, who
I didn't vote. No, I abstained.
abstained?
I abstained.
It's his right to.
I have a
abstain.
right to cast a ballot.
And
And if you don't like it, so what?
By right to, now I've got this agenda item. Motion on the floor, it's been properly seconded.
And it's an invalid motion on its face because you didn't state it on the agenda.
Discussing and possible
You need to state it on the agenda.
No, we
If
don't.
that's an action you want to take,
We're taking
you
action
need
on
to
me,
state that on the
action
agenda.
on you.
You need to state that on the agenda.
As did.
FOI.
You took an illegal action to remove me from committees. Now,
I
your
have-
question, Ms. Castillo, is continue to have 4 attendance at regular committee members' meetings. We've had board members not show up to any committees. We have board members in the past few years who aren't even assigned committees. And a bulk of us did the work. I did the work. I put in the time. I come to every single meeting. The chair was publicly called corrupt by Christopher Taylor. No action, just giggles. Meetings are constantly disrupted. The chair does nothing. People behave like the chair is behaving right now, screaming and yelling over people who have the floor, which is improper behavior. That's never called out, and it causes more and more problems on them. And nothing happens to them. So under investigation, all that could be Googled. You can see that. And the racist and homophobic posts on social
Yeah,
media.
you clipped a lot of stuff.
Yeah, John.
You clipped.
And
So-
Cecilia, does that answer all your questions, or do you have another?
I do have another one. This language here, bylaw 9280, which governs committee assignments. The policy speaks to the chair's power to appoint committee members by filing as soon as possible after the organizational meeting and is silent on removing. Is this the language? Is this it right here now that you're passing out?
The actual policy, yes. The actual policy,
Do you mind if I read it out loud?
sure thing.
The board shall act as a committee of the whole on all matters coming before it, except that special committees for the consideration or investigation of certain problems or for the performance of certain board functions may be created by vote of the board. Committee members and chairs shall be appointed by the chairman by filing a list thereof with the superintendent's office as soon as possible following the organizational meeting. The chairperson's designation shall be made public at the first board meeting subsequent to its filing, which I do believe we did at the beginning of this term. Such special committees shall submit their reports at such regular meetings of the board as may be determined, and when such reports have been submitted and accepted by the board, shall be discharged. All special committee reports affecting board policy shall be submitted in writing. A special committee's only authority is to make recommendations to the board regarding matters that have been referred to it, unless the board specifically authorizes otherwise. Each committee chair, with the assistance of the superintendent's office, will establish a schedule of committee meetings. Meetings of committee shall be posted in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. A record shall be maintained by the chair of each committee of each meeting, which shall include the names of the committee members in attendance, listing of topics discussed, and committee recommendations. The superintendent's office shall notify all board members of committee meetings. While board members may attend meetings of committees they are not a member of, they shall not participate or vote as a member of such committee and shall not participate or be present in portions of committee meetings held in executive session. Notwithstanding, the committee chair may recognize them to speak in the portions of the meetings open to the public. So I'm,
And
what language in here specifically are you deferring to that does not say, or that says that the chair is not?
the chair is authorized to make committee assignments, but the chair took an action at the last meeting saying he is removing me from committees due to my actions in the email. If we all can recall that, or we could bring it up at 41 minutes into the meeting where he says that. Nowhere in here it says he can remove committee members at will. He can make new committee assignments, but the action he took was one, illegal, wasn't properly noticed, because we'll get into that in the next one where you have the proper notice of filing charges against somebody, taking an action against them. So he took an action that he was not allowed to take. Had he simply didn't say anything and did all the assignments, did all the committees, I wouldn't have an action, because he does have the right to change committees. But since he said he's removing me for committee because I did this, he does not have that authority.
You just said I have the right to change committee memberships. The only thing I did was give a brief explanation to you. I could have just stayed silent, never said anything.
You have
I offered to provide you with a forum. And before I could do that, you petitioned for this special meeting. So we're doing this now. And I still maintain that under Connecticut Freedom of Information laws, because you didn't specifically say what action you want to take tonight with respect to anything, that you're really not in a position to take any action. If you'd like me to, I can run this by our attorney and have him interpret this. But you didn't even ask for that.
Well, I guess after we take the vote, we could affirm.
The vote again is illegal. I'll take that to the attorney. He'll make a ruling on it and it'll be overturned. But you did not properly, you did not specifically state an action. You did not specifically state an action on this agenda that you wanted to take. Ergo, the public was given no opportunity under FOI to have any understanding of what specific action might occur tonight. And that would be a violation of the Connecticut Freedom of Information laws. Under a regular meeting, if you wanted to add this, you could do that with a 2/3 vote. But because this is a special meeting, you have to stick to the agenda as it was posted, and you have to be very, very specific on what you are intending to do. Had you changed this up to 24 hours ago, we would be fine. But as it stands, we have two nebulous agenda items that do not indicate concretely what action specifically might happen tonight. So the motion that's on the floor is invalid under FOI.
I believe Ms. Baptiste Perez.
Ms. Baptiste Perez.
There's a few comments. Let me see if I can go back on one. First, I believe it's totally relevant as to comments that you stated while you were a board member, if this is from 3 years ago, as other board members in other districts, including Naugatuck right now, are being asked to resign for similarly offensive comments stated in 2014, 8 years ago. Second, because in general, and I would be interested to see the email or correspondence you send to the attorney for the board.
Sure.
But when there is silence, you could have
I could have.
removed him from his committees. However, when you made public allegations regarding him, and I was not notified, none of us, or I was not notified. I can't speak on everyone else. It wasn't in my board packet. It wasn't, the content of the chairman's report wasn't in the board packet. It came to me as a surprise, especially since I can acknowledge when people do their work. And I felt as a board member, not given proper notice and information about an action item you were going to take, where it is silent and you decide to list causation, is in violation of the law. So if any information that you're going to seek from the school attorney, I would like to see as well. And I would like to see the memo outlining the law with it, because in general, that's how contracts law go.
This is the contract.
Uh,
But I will say this.
Because
I'm going to contend that because I brought up the subject of Mr. Sokolovic's conduct, that aspect is in violation of the Freedom of Information law. I'm not sure about that. That can be verified with the Freedom of Information Commission. They provide opinions all the time. But the fact, even if that were a violation, that doesn't suddenly make my removal of him invalid.
yes, it does.
They're two separate elements. They're two separate elements.
You're cherry picking in order to validate your
They're two
point.
separate elements. And you know, if
Just
they
because-
want to issue a finding against me, they can do that.
It almost sounds like, was it the fruit of the poison, like illicit fruit from a tree? You're trying to justify actions and you called out and list reasons why that wasn't valid.
I have a question.
Ms. Brown,
So I just wanted to know, was the chairman's report? Was the
say it
chairman's
again?
report, was the chairman's report what was supposed to be on the agenda? That's what I want to know.
It was
because-
placed on the agenda 5 days before the meeting, 4 days before the meeting.
Okay.
Right. But it only satisfies half the law. Where is that? For posting of meetings.
These are, you know, there is a Connecticut Freedom of Information Commission. If you feel you have been violated under the Freedom of Information laws, the most appropriate action is to file an FOIC complaint. Stay face with them, lay it out, they will issue a fee. But it's not for us to determine whether I violated FOIA. If you want to get a ruling, file a complaint with the Freedom of Information Commission. They'll conduct a hearing and they'll get down to the bottom of it and they'll issue a finding and a proposed remedy. But this is not the right forum for that.
I'm just asking because I don't remember seeing that a part of the initial agenda. That's why I'm asking.
There was an initial agenda,
And it failed to.
there was an initial agenda prepared on Friday, Thursday or Friday, the 9th or the 10th. And it was subsequently modified on Monday. It's permitted, special meeting, as long as it's more than 24 hours before the meeting. And it was modified and it was filed.
Yes, and that only meets one late, I'm sorry, I didn't ask for the floor. May I have the floor, please? Thank you. That meets one leg of the test. The second leg of the test for these board members need to be informed. Our packet had an agenda out the posting, and the board members were not informed of the change. We sat here and nobody knew that was going to happen. If anybody knew that was going to happen, and if anybody got it in their packet with the updated agenda, please speak now.
You know, they post the packets to the internal portal. I didn't look in the portal, so I don't know what you saw, when you saw it, or anything like that.
You know,
All I know is the agenda was modified and it was filed with the city clerk.
and the bottom line is, it's the chair's responsibility to make sure the board members are informed. It's the chair's responsibility to make sure meetings are posted.
Well, for a discussion about you, we're doing a lot of talking about me. Anyone else have anything to Ms. Baptiste Perez?
Can you admit that the following did occur? Is that board committee members held the position for 8 months? And
To the beginning. Can you start over?
can you admit or deny whether the following facts or information did occur? Which is board members who failed to hold committee meetings as chair for 8 months and only one meeting for the entire year. Did that occur?
It has occurred,
Okay.
but
I-
to add to that, they're not required to. They're not required. It's each committee chair's discretion as to when they hold their meetings based on what business they feel they have to conduct. We don't hold personnel committee meetings all the time. We hold them when there's people to interview. We don't hold contracts meetings all the time. We hold them when there's a contract to review. So it's to the discretion of each committee chair as to whether they think there's enough business to warrant holding a meeting. Some hold them every month, which ritualistically, others do it as needed. And there's nothing that says you have to do it one way or the other.
All right, I'm just gonna elaborate a little bit further onto that particular committee. For that particular committee, it was the diversity, equity, and inclusion, correct?
Yes.
In a district where the overwhelming majority of the students are Black and Latino, and from what I've witnessed at graduation, where I hadn't seen a Black male in the top 2 positions, I find that highly doubtful that there was no business to be conducted regarding diversity in the most diverse school district and the largest district in the state.
Well, that-
I'm going to move on with the second part. Can you please admit or deny whether the following did occur, that board members who continue to have poor attendance at regular meetings were not reprimanded? That's going to go to the second point. I'm on page 1, paragraph 3, which lists down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Spoken
6,
to.
7 items.
Spoken.
I'm on 2.
They were spoken to.
They were spoken to, but were they reprimanded or removed from their committees?
They weren't on a committee.
Okay. Is it true that board members who were under investigation or arrest for trespassing, kidnapping, stabbing, or living out of the district for election infractions were allowed to stay on their committees?
Again, they were not on any committees.
Okay.
And was this,
This is 2 years ago. They're referring to people who are long gone and who did things in their personal lives that, you know, we can't reprimand people for what they do in their personal lives.
But is it not true that how we conduct ourselves in public is in part interpreted as a reflection of the board itself?
Of course.
So do you find it problematic that it could be interpreted that your posts were racist and homophobic?
It is interpreted because that's how they're being presented.
Do you have any evidence at this moment aside from what you've provided? Because this still can be interpreted as offensive. We're in a, because I'm the second one as ignoring the Adam and Steve actors. In a school district where a lot of students have faced or grown up in households with one or less parent figure, I think laughing at the death of parents is not funny. in the school districts where we have little kids, joking about choking hazards is not funny. And at the time you made this post, were you a member of the board?
So I was a member of the board. Post 3 years ago that a Facebook friend of mine shared, and I just laughed at it. That's all.
I have another,
This is the focus of what we're talking about. None of this has anything to do with my performance as the chairman of the Board of Education. You can like what I post or don't post, or feelings of my wife. She's entitled to have an opinion on race. And if I share it and it rubs you the wrong way, that's okay. But this is not a topic of discussion as it relates to my performance.
this is all conduct
And
that
I think,
while you were a member of the board. And as stated, that in other districts in the state, people are being reprimanded and asked to step down
I read the,
early. Yes.
Yeah.
And their conduct was from 8 years ago, and when they weren't members of the board.
all right. You know, I feel like this has turned into less of a discourse about our respective performance and more into a hit job, an orchestrated one at that, on me personally. I did not come here to be publicly berated or humiliated or to be shown in a light that is not true. I did not come here for that. You asked for this meeting, and I gave it to you in good faith.
You gave it to me.
And this is what you've chosen to do.
Mr. Chair, I apologize if you
And-
feel
and again-
offended by this.
Considering we're on the agenda item of performance of Joe Sokolovic, we're doing a lot of talking about me.
It was,
And that's what makes me say, this is not genuine. There is not anything positive that is intended with this meeting. At the end of the day, Joe,
Mr. Chair, I wasn't done talking,
at the end of the day,
and
Joe,
I do want to apologize, but I wasn't done with my set of questions.
I'm just going to say this because we're people here. And I'm not going to be interrogated as if I'm on trial and asked if I will confirm or deny. This is not a trial. I'm just going to say that all of this was precipitated by this email and the exchange. You could have just as easily, and most other people would have, picked up the phone and said, hey, John, just so you know, there's a problem with the notice. I want to let you know about it so it can be corrected.
I could have,
That would have been the end of it.
but I didn't. Which rule did I violate by not doing so?
I'm
What
talking as a person. I didn't say you had to.
So I didn't violate any
I didn't
rules.
say you violated, but I mean, we're all rational people.
What part
I just-
part of the email did you take offense to? You said it was rude and disrespectful. What part?
Seriously asking me that?
Yes, I am. Which part did you find rude and disrespectful?
Can I be recognized?
Go ahead.
I'm asking the chair.
I'm not answering. I'm not answering. I think it's obvious.
He said he
It's
doesn't want.
obvious.
I've been recognized by the chair. I was under the impression that this meeting was going to be to discuss the email exchanges that
And it is.
that happened recently. I was hoping that it would be a more productive conversation about, the behavior of board members. I'm not interested in sitting here and speculating about years and years of things that happened before I was on the board. I don't think that that's relevant to my performance on the board or who we are now as a team. And I do find this to be very, beyond what is necessary of this moment. And I would like a motion to adjourn.
There are seconds.
There's a motion on the floor. We cannot have a motion.
It's not debatable.
I
second.
You resigned.
There's a motion resolved.
You
There's a motion
resigned,
on the
Mike.
floor.
It's an illegal motion.
Go ahead. There's a motion.
I don't
Illegal.
feel comfortable voting on a motion that could
And it's still
potentially
another agenda item.
illegal. He said that he would look into whether or not the motion was legal. So we can circle back and decide, Joe, if it's within our purview as board members to give you your committee assignments back. I'm not comfortable with that.
Committee assignments were never removed. If you check on the website,
So then why are you making a motion to bring his,
John illegally made causation accusations to the performance of Sokolovic, and Sokolovic has presented to the board situations where it could be more dire and as expressed in the news,
I have a valid,
against public policy
Motion's
and a
made and
bad
seconded.
reflection of the city.
Roll call.
All in favor?
Roll call.
roll call.
Roll call.
John Weldon,
Adjourn.
Erica Castillo,
I adjourn.
Joe Lombard, aye. Joe Sokolovic,
No.
Christine Baptiste Perez,
No,
Albert Benahan,
No.
Michael Macaron.
Yes.
Bobby's not here.
did you resign, Mike?
Carries 4-3.
Good night.
Good night.
Don't forget to send it to the city clerk.
I'm gonna call